So I want to talk a little bit about the art of persuasion with you guys. I did a video on Tucker Carlson and I'm going to butcher this guy's name again. Rutger? Yeah, Rutger Bregman. Rutger Bregman is an academic, a lefty academic. I'm not sure if he's an economist. He's some sort of a left-wing intellectual, and he did this awesome thing at Davos, which is the gathering of elitists, and he basically schooled them on why I don't know how to talk, higher marginal tax rates on the rich are actually a good thing, and that there's even a history of this in the United States to prove it, among other places as well. So he kind of confronted the people at Davos, not just on that issue, I think on a few other issues as well, and it caught the eye of a lot of alternative media outlets, and we covered it, and it also, for whatever reason, caught the eye of Tucker Carlson. And so Tucker invited this guy on his show, and in this viral video, I think Now This originally reported it, the segment went unaired, and what you saw was Walter Bregman starting off, in a kind of normal, somewhat pleasant, somewhat agreeable conversation with Tucker, and then by the end of it, Tucker was screaming at Bregman and kicking him off the show, and Fox News literally didn't air the segment. So it was interesting. For those of you who haven't seen that video, I urge you to go see it. You could either watch the original Now This video with the full video of Bregman and Tucker Carlson talking. You actually should watch that no matter what. But you could also watch, my take on it as well. I know the Young Turks covered it as well. And the Progressive Voice did an interesting video where he covered this, and, he doesn't agree with what he calls, and it's a fair description, the half defense of Tucker Carlson that I gave. Now, I did my best to explain my position in that video in a super nuanced way. So again, you can go and check that out. In that video, I reiterated the fact that I think Tucker Carlson is a fraud and that he uses economic populism to then hook people into supporting standard right-wing Republican politicians who actually push anti-populist economic policies. So I stated that he was a fraud, but still the segment with Bregman rubbed me the wrong way. And I wanted to clarify further on this topic because I think it's really important. So when you watch that video and you kind of remove your pre-existing biases from your filter as you watch it, I tried to remove my own ideology and just kind of watch it as if I was a person who's apolitical and doesn't care about politics, and take the segment in for what it's worth. And what I took away from that conversation, agree or disagree with Bregman on his politics, and obviously I agree with Bregman on his politics, it struck me like he was trying to get kicked off the show. It struck me like he was actively trying to push Tucker's buttons and be arrogant and disagree for the sake of disagreeing, not even necessarily on substance, but like he was bending over backwards to get kicked off of the show, and he was trying to make it so that the segment goes unaired so that he could say, look, I spoke truth to power again. I did it at Davos, and now I did it on Tucker Carlson's show. And this gets into a broader conversation about the art of persuasion. And this is an issue that I actually care deeply about. And, this may sound arrogant, but I consider myself somewhat of an expert on the art of persuasion. And I say that because I've heard from, people who've been aligned with the show for a long time. I won't name names because I don't know if they want me to. But I've converted, people who were Republican voters for decades. I've been called a gateway out of the alt-right. There are people who find themselves on this, long but sure path towards radicalization where, I don't need to name the YouTubers or the pundits that get people started down this path, but we all know who they are. We all know they exist. And you start with some anti-social justice warrior stuff, and then you scoot a little further right on the political spectrum, and the next thing you know, you're posting Pepe memes, and you're thinking Richard Spencer is a fucking genius. So there's this, gateway to radicalization And I don't know how many people who are those commentators who I'm referring to know that they're participating in this. I think most of them don't, and they're just kind of doing their own thing, and they don't even realize that they provide this sort of gateway to the alt-right. But I've been called the gateway out of that because, what I try to do on my show, and I pride myself on this, is every time I do a segment, I try to craft the arguments as if my biggest enemies are watching, and I try to craft those arguments in a way where even my biggest detractors and my biggest enemies have to pause and go, you know what? That wasn't a bad point. I actually agree with Kyle on that specific thing. Now, I've seen pundits who don't do that, who do the opposite of that. Yet again, I won't name names, but my takeaway from those kinds of pundits, honestly, is that they're hacks. Because what they're doing is the easiest form of political commentary imaginable. Be a partisan, tribalist douche and just preach to your audience, preach to the choir over and over and over, jerk each other off about how right you are and how everybody else is evil. And then ultimately, the conversation gets nowhere. Nobody likes you because you look like a bunch of insular pricks, and you're not actually convincing people, and you're making nobody change their mind. So what's the point? It's like, it's almost, it's like self-gratifying nonsense. It's like masturbation. It's like, what do you just want to hear the sound of your own voice and have the same group of 8 people agree with you? No, you want to, at least I know I do. My ultimate goal is to get a certain set of policy priorities implemented because I care deeply about those priorities. I think they'll help everybody. And I want to convert more people into realizing that this is the way to go. The things we're describing would help everybody and are really good things. So some of the critics of what I was saying in regards to Tucker, I just want to, I'm not going to name names here, but there was somebody who sat on Twitter to me, and they even threw Cenk in here. I don't know the nature of Cenk's pseudo-defense of Tucker, but this person said, gotta love how gullible Cenk Uygur and Kyle Klinsky are. Yeah, just let a propagandist, meaning Tucker, direct the conversation at all times, like, let's be nice to the racist with the show who lies about everything. Shake my head. Now, but that's just the thing. The topic was not race. If the topic was race, you know who would be massively disagreeing and would be making the strongest case possible against the arguments put forth by Tucker Carlson? Me. And I'm sure Cenk would as well. The topic wasn't that. The topic was taxes and economics. And on those issues, when somebody says, hey, I think you have a point, when you respond by going, no, I don't accept that you agree with me, and then you continue to be a dick, that's not helping anything or anybody and not furthering the conversation. Now, this gets into a question of, now, again, I just said at the beginning, Tucker Carlson is a fraud. Correct, he's a fraud. He uses economic populism to hook people into just supporting standard Republican politicians who are not economically populist. So you can point out that hypocrisy, you can point out that contradiction, and then I think a lot of people will see the light when you make that point. How can you support Donald Trump when his economic policies, particularly his tax bill, was massively anti-populist and it helped the rich? It didn't help regular people. 83% of the benefits go to the top 1%. Yet you claim or you act as if you're this economically populist person looking out for the working class. You're simply not doing this. But this gets to the question of purity. Now, I consider myself a bit of a moral purist and a bit of a policy purist. In other words, I'm not going to compromise in reaching our ultimate goals of Medicare for all, living wage, ending the wars, free college, so on and so forth. I'm not going to compromise on my morality. I'm not going to do it. Those aren't areas where you should be open to compromise. Where I am open to compromise is I'm not a strategic purist. I'm a strategic empiricist. So whatever works to get more conversions to our ideology and whatever works to get more people to see the light and push for the right ideas in this world to make this world a better place, that's what I'm for. So that's why I think it makes perfect sense to frame the debate from your opponent's perspective. As you guys have seen me done at Politicon, for example, when I was on the same stage as Charlie Kirk, my argument was, hey, listen, you guys say You want smaller government. You know where some areas are where I want smaller government? I want the NSA to be smaller. I think what they do is illegal and unconstitutional. They shouldn't be allowed to do what they do and spying on everybody. You know where I want smaller government? I don't want as much war. I think we're bombing way too many countries. I think we do offensive wars of aggression, and that's illegal under international law and U.S. law, and I want to shrink the military. I want to shrink the government in that respect. I want smaller government when it comes to the war on drugs. I want to free every nonviolent drug offender. I want to make sure we legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana. And then guess what? Since I framed the debate from what they say their ideology is, they were like, yeah, I agree with you on those points. Boom. Now, if I had gone into those conversations with Charlie Kirk, saying I'm going to make the opposite point of every point he makes every step of the way, you know how many of people that were in his audience that would have said, who is this Kyle Klinsky guy? What's he pushing? Let me look into him. You know how many would have done that? 0. But since I framed the debate from their ideology, from their perspective, or what they say is their perspective, I'm sure many of those people went, who is this guy and what's he talking about and what's his thing? And then they maybe check out Secular Talk on YouTube and they watch a couple of videos. Fast forward a few months, you've watched a couple hundred videos, and all of a sudden, they're going, that Bernie Sanders guy makes a lot of sense, doesn't he? And boom, you have a deconversion. So, in the case of Tucker Carlson, if Walter, I keep calling him Walter, it's not Walter, it's Rutger. If Rutger Bregman went on there, didn't compromise his policy beliefs, didn't compromise his values or his morals at all in any way, shape, or form, but he took what Tucker was trying to do, reframed the conversation on his own terms, namely, hey, I'm a real economic populist, AOC's a real economic populist, Bernie Sanders is a real economic populist, you, Tucker, are not. You carry water for Trump as you pretend to be economically populist. So, here are my terms in the debate. And now, after we've established that, and we've established that you're kind of a fraud, and you're using this issue cynically, now, I will do my absolute best to frame the conversation from your perspective, find points of agreement with your audience in the hopes of deconverting them, and not basically try to get kicked off the show, as it appeared to me that Bregman was doing. Well, then guess what would have happened? I think he would have converted people in the audience over time. Conversion is not, it's not like a fucking religious thing where, oh, I see the light, Jesus just came to me and I now know he's real. No. Political, economic beliefs build up over time and they transition over time. So you have to be patient with people and deconvert them over time. And you have to start with points of agreement and build on that. So if you go on there and your whole point was, I'm going to try to get kicked off, I'm going to browbeat the host who, the audience is watching Tucker, they already like Tucker. So they don't think he's a fraud. So you're going into the lion's den, you're not going to convert any people, you're going to be arrogant, try to get kicked off, browbeat the guy that they like. Now, every single thing Walter, why do I keep calling him Walter? Rutger Bregman stands for. Everything he stands for, they now say, no, I hate him, I disagree with him. And here's another example of the left not being able to build bridges or convince people and being closed-minded to everybody, and I'm done. I want nothing to do with him or his ideology. And I think in the long run, that's a horrible idea. And it strikes me as actually short-term opportunist because now Bregman gets a bunch of headlines, a bunch of pats on the head from people who are partisans on the left, and they go, oh, look at you, you owned Tucker Carlson. And it's just, honestly, it's just the mirror image of Ben Shapiro. Now, again, I think that Bregman is correct on the policy substance, but the way he went about trying to present this worldview, he's not going to lead to more conversions at all. He's not converting anybody. He's just getting pats on the head from, the partisan tribalist base. Now, listen, if that was his point, and if he doesn't care about changing people's minds, okay, then you succeeded. And then take all of my criticism of you, throw it out the window and say, I did what I wanted to do. Okay, fair enough, man. But me, I'm in the business of conversion. I'm in the business of taking people who might agree with me 10% today, and you fast forward a year from now, and they 80% agree with me. And again, that doesn't mean that in any way, shape, or form you compromise your morality or your policy beliefs. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm a 100% purist on my policy beliefs and on my moral beliefs. What I'm not a purist on is strategy. I will do whatever works in terms of strategy. I will frame the conversation from their perspective. I will take points of agreement and then expand on them. And this gets into a bigger issue, which is, what is your goal if you're involved in politics? What is your goal? Here's my goal. I want to get the policies that I know will fix this country and help everybody's life. I want to get them implemented. And in the process of that, I also want to convert as many people as humanly possible to these ideas, okay? And there are many people on the left who might not know it, or maybe they do know it, but they don't agree with me on that. They're involved in politics because they want to play for a team. And they want to scratch that itch, that tribalist itch. And they want to have people they call friends, and they want to have people they call enemies. And they want to play that game, and they want to play that game all day long. I don't agree with those people. I think that's short-sighted. I think that's silly. I think that's dumb. I think that's a waste of time. I think that's childish. And you're going to get nowhere, and you're just stroking your own ego and making yourself feel like a good person, and you're just virtue signaling in your own bubble all day. Now, final point I'll make on this, I know I've been going on for a while, and I know I've been rambling, and I haven't even made my point super clearly in this video, even though I'm trying to clarify. A related issue to this. Ro Khanna tweeted something the other day where he basically, it was a little hat tip to Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson made a decent point on the issue of intervention in war. And Ro Khanna's tweet was just a little hat tip. Oh, hey, decent point on let's end wars, Tucker. You would think he came out for cannibalism, because the reaction to that was a bunch of people who are tribalists on the left shitting on him all day long. And what was their argument? He's a white supremacist. How dare you? That was the whole point. How dare you? He's a bigot. He's a xenophobe. He's a white supremacist. Now, is Tucker Carlson a bigot, a xenophobe, and a white supremacist? Yes, I think he is. And I would debate him heads up on those specific issues and explain to him why his views on immigration are dead wrong. But Ro Khanna didn't say, I agree with Tucker Carlson on xenophobia, on bigotry, on white supremacy. He said, nice point on saying we should end wars. So when your response to that is, yeah, but then there's these other areas where he's bad. Correct. And Ro Khanna didn't say he was good on those issues. In fact, he would 100% agree with you that Tucker is terrible on those issues. So what I'm sick of is people not understanding how the real world works. You do know that Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul work together many times. Does that mean Bernie Sanders is an apologist for somebody who wants to abolish the FDA and abolish all Wall Street regulations? No, because Bernie didn't say, I agree with you on abolishing the FDA and abolishing all Wall Street regulations. In fact, he quite clearly argues against that every step of the way when that topic comes up. What Bernie was saying was, on foreign policy, I agree with Ron Paul. On the drug war, I agree with Ron Paul. And you know what? They work together to try to end those things. The same week, here's the height of the absurdity of the people who are going after Ro. The same week that Ro Khanna literally fought for years to get to this point where he could end a literal genocide that we're supporting, there were more tweets on social media against Ro Khanna because he did a hat tip to a bad character who happened to make a decent point on being anti-war. In the same week, the guy literally passed a bill to end our support for a genocide, and we should all be singing his praises and talking about how he's the future of the Democratic Party, and that he should be president someday, and that he's a real leader, and that he literally saved the lives of innocent men, women, and children in Yemen. At the same time we should be doing that, a bunch of idiots were going after him because he dared to step outside of the lines of what the tribalists deemed was acceptable. And that I can't stand. I cannot accept that by any stretch of the imagination. Because those people are not serious people. They're just not. Just as Bernie Sanders worked with Ron Paul, just as Bernie Sanders in the Senate for this same Yemen bill to end genocide, our support of genocide, he worked with Mike Lee, who's wrong on 90% of the issues. But that's not an argument against him, because he didn't agree with him on the 90% where he's wrong. He agreed with him on the 10% that he's fucking right. So you have to get out of this stupid mindset of, I have here henceforth declared that person X is an irredeemable, and I will not find any points of agreement on any issues, and I will not try to use people's ideology to then branch out and get them to convert to other beliefs that we have. These people are simply not, they don't have the same goals that I have and that hopefully many of you have. My goals are, I want to get these policy beliefs that I know will help everybody implemented. And I want to convert more people to believing these things, which we know, based on the evidence, are the correct things in terms of helping people. That's my goal. How we get there, yes, it involves taking people who we otherwise disagree with massively on other issues and agreeing with them when we agree with them. To play this game where it's like, no, even on issues where I agree with you, I will not agree with you, because on other issues I don't agree with you, you're just dumbasses. I don't know what else you want me to tell you. You're unserious. So that's why I'm doing what I do. And my criticism of Bregman is based on, I want his policy message to reach more people, convert more people, and then push us towards a better society and getting these policy proposals implemented. What he did was, in my estimation, the strategy that will lead to the exact opposite conclusion. Now more people who could have possibly been converted to left populism are now shut off to it because of his strategy and because of how he approached it. And Tucker Carlson, who had on left-wing guests, albeit for cynical reasons, and again, he is a fraud, but he had on left-wing guests who could further that left-wing message. Now Tucker Carlson is much less likely to have on any left-wing guests. Because last time he had one on, the guy basically tried to get kicked off and tried to browbeat him. So, if you don't agree with that analysis, fine. But just know that I don't think you're serious if you're not involved in this whole politics thing to get the right policies implemented and to convert as many people as possible to this ideology which would help the most people. And listen, I'm just going to have to reckon with the fact that many people are just not involved in politics for those reasons. They're just not. They're involved in politics to scratch the tribal itch, to say, hey, I want to play for a team, I want to be a partisan, I want to be a tribalist. I actually don't. Their ultimate goal is not what my ultimate goal is, which is, again, to get these policies which we know will help everybody implement it and to convert as many people to believing in these policies. So perhaps that's a fault of my own for not just accepting that there are people who are in politics for different reasons than me. But I would hope that they would see the wisdom of trying what I think is the better approach, which is you should be a moral purist and you should be a policy purist. And you should never compromise on that. But what you should compromise on all day long is strategy. And you should be a strategic empiricist. And all you should care about is what works in terms of getting more people to believe what you believe and to fight for your ideology. So, I don't know. Hopefully I convince people, but I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people who watch this and still for reasons that are incomprehensible would argue that, I'm somehow promoting a racist or, lending credibility to bad actors or whatever the fuck kind of goofy nonsense people come up with. No, or maybe you need to actually listen more closely to the argument and understand it before you knee-jerk reactionary come out against it.